Welcome back. It's Some Bolts podcast about technology, life, philosophy, and everything in between. It is Saturday, September 7th, 2024. As your host, Muskrat, along with co-host Mongoose and Dubstench.
How's it going?
Word. As Venezuelan gangs, are Venezuelan gangs running rabid in Aurora, Colorado? Or are they like any of our other homegrown gangs in America? Is the management company using this as an excuse to be derelict in its duties? Let's find out.
Thug life.
Grab a drink as we read some headlines, read emails, review the situation at Aurora, Colorado. Email the show, packetsandbolts@gmail.com, packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Join us on Discord, Mastodon, all that stuff.
MySpace.
Yes, well, today I am, there is no cocktail from me at least. I don't know if you guys will be making one, but I have a beer from a place in, I think it's a brewery out of Oshkosh. It is called Fifth Ward Brewing. And it's called Bold Assumptions. It is a stout. And you know me, I like to try stouts. So I'm going to have that right now because I'm thirsty and hungover.
Yeah, maybe we need to start having people email in with drinks that we can try.
I actually have a new one we got to try after last night.
Okay, well, I mean, I got all the liquor here in my bunker.
It'll be for the next one, I think.
But I have a beer from a local Milwaukee brewery called Miller Lite. That's what I'm drinking right now.
Is that a microbrew?
And I have a canned pre-made mango margarita, which isn't too bad.
What's that from? Cutwater?
It is from Cutwater, yes.
All right. Well, I'm sampling this. It's interesting.
Yeah, mine's not that interesting.
I think as long as they make this, and I can find it, I think I'll be grabbing it. I've had stuff from them before, but they usually have like their runs, you know, and then you have to wait till it comes around again and all that kind of stuff. So
it looks like it's in a beer sleeve.
Yeah, their can.
Yeah, they can.
Their can seems to be wrapped in like some
Textured
I
sort
like
of
that
print.
label.
I like that. It's like a retro can design.
Who cares? You're going to throw it away anyway.
All right.
I mean, I applaud
that's
that.
good. That's good.
Well, if you're going to have a can collection, I think the proper way to do it is you actually drain it from the bottom. You poke a hole in the bottom and you pour your beer that way. Like if you're a can collector, like
Really?
Yeah, you're not supposed to flip the tab.
Okay, but why put a hole in it? Why not save the whole
Get
beer?
the beer out of it.
Well, you still want to drink the beer.
Oh,
You don't need the beer in it to have a collection.
Well, it's going to get gross in there eventually, and it could explode, like gets heated or in the sun.
Would you drink an old Pabst from
No.
50 years ago?
No.
I had a Miller High Life that was like 5 years old. That was in a can but it was in a basement.
How was it?
Unopened. It wasn't like a new one. It wasn't like super terrible, but like you could tell it wasn't the best.
Well, your ability to drink aged alcohol beverages like that is dependent on the amount of air that gets into it, right? So, I mean, the best wine that's like old that people can try and taste that maybe 100 or 200 years old, like that's got to be sealed, multiple layers of like wax and things. I mean, like
It's also a cork and glass,
Yeah.
unlike a can that's going to get nasty.
but like the ancient peoples too, like they knew how to preserve and age wine. But if you look at the clay vases or vessels that they were using, there's multiple layers of like, I don't know, it looks like papyrus, but then they've got wax and, layers of clay and stuff like that to preserve it and keep it away from the air. Otherwise, it would spoil.
Yeah.
And that's where that whole, like, people go like, oh, like, come, hey, look at this bottle of wine. Like, what would you buy it for? It's like, well, you can't drink it because you stored it, like, upward. Like, you can't store wine upward.
Too long. Yep. It'll dry the cork.
The cork will dry, and then the air will get in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you
You got vinegar. Boom, you got vinegar.
You got to have it on an angle and rotate every so often.
Or just drink it, because that's what it's for, not for looking at.
Well, you got those aged
Aged
wines.
wines are good.
Well, this beer is good. And did I say the name of it already? Bold Assumptions. So if I didn't say that. And it's an American stout, supposedly. I don't know what an American stout is other than being made in America, or is that an actual style? I don't know.
Inspired by American culture.
All right. It's a little heavier than Guinness. Yeah. I like it. I like stouts.
Best stout. My favorite stout is still Murphy's, but they don't sell it around here anymore.
You can't. I can't find it
Can't
now.
find it.
Maybe if we go to what's a big? Is it Woodman's? The big giant.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
they got it, but
They might, but
you know, the local Irish pub in town used to have it on tap, and then it disappeared. Like they took it off tap because nobody was drinking, and then they had the cans, and then it just disappeared.
yeah, I don't even remember what it tastes like. But you keep talking about how good it is, so now I have to
It's
try
my
to find it.
favorite. It's like you put Guinness to shame.
Well, I know someone who was arguing with me that dark beers are.
Make you gay?
He was he was basically equating them to like if you don't like. I'm trying to think of what he was saying. He's saying it's basically destroying all the nuances. And my argument was light beers. His point was a light beer. You can't hide mistakes. So I kind of get what he's saying. And if you burn things too much, kind of like Starbucks coffee, right? It tastes like shit. But I personally like a dark roast that's done right over a light roast. But you have to do it right. And I was saying there's a lot more flavor in a given stout than I've ever tasted in like some light
Yeah, so
beer.
based on that argument, you're saying that like there's so much flavor in a stout that you can mask like impurities.
I don't know.
The bad flavors that come from impurities better.
I don't know, yeah. But every light beer I've had doesn't have any like real great flavor usually, so I don't know.
I like wheat beers. That's
Yeah,
I don't
wheat
like
beers.
the
Like
dark stuff.
pilsners, yeah.
Amber, I like ambers. But I've never tasted a light beer that I was amazed by it. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. I don't know what his point was, but he brews beer, and he was just saying that the dark stuff, it's only a little bit. He says there's only a little bit of the, what is it, the wort or whatever they do? They
Your
call
wort,
it.
yeah.
That's actually like the roasted hops that make it a dark beer. And so he's arguing that it's really just something that just covers up a bunch of other flavors. I don't know. I like stouts. That's all I can tell you. I'm a stout man.
Yeah, I've always, the Dunkel Warsteiner was, I was a big
Yes.
fan of that when I was younger.
Yes. All right.
Yep.
All right. Let's get some
Scottish ales and porters and stouts.
porters. Are nice. Scottish ales. I usually stay away from. They're too strong. In my advanced age here, I can't drink them anymore. But if you can find a low alcohol Scottish ale, I like them.
See, now I can't handle IPAs. I can't do IPAs.
I only like a few, and only sometimes I have to be in the mood. I
Yeah,
know
that's
CG's
not like a
IPA man.
six-pack type of thing. That's like a one or two if you're in the mood.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to talk about here. And I don't remember, when is this from? This is from July 29th. This is the first one I opened. Oh, it's a ServiceNow breach. Did you hear about this one? ServiceNow critical remote code execution bug under active exploit. Oh, ServiceNow. Unauthenticated RCE chain allows total access. Oof. And guess what? It's an input validation vulnerability in ServiceNow's Vancouver and Washington, D.C.'s version of the platform. Anyways.
So what's the vector though? You gotta have access to the ServiceNow deployment or like within an account.
It's the vector,
then,
Victor.
And then where's the
Unauthenticated.
input validation? So like
It's
where
unauthenticated, so they don't have to be authenticated. Yeah.
So just in the login prompt, you can
I guess, yeah. I don't
like
know.
the old SQL injection attacks type of thing.
Yeah, like I guess. I mean, this happened at the end of July, and I know most people were patching this, but it's just another, critical issue with large pieces of software that's going on. I don't understand how any input validation attacks can happen in modern day. And also, if you have a self-hosted mid-server, they could become targets too.
Well, and it's interesting though that these stories always come out, but there's not a lot of knowledge by the general public about how they're executed. So I ask about what's the vector? Well, like right now, kind of related. There's a whole lot of stuff going around on social media about some new, I guess. won't call it a phishing campaign, but like, well, they're sending packages out to people, supposedly. Now, I haven't received one of these packages, right? But you receive a package with a gift from a company that you've ordered from before, and it's got a QR code in it. So, like, they try to trick people into scanning the QR code.
Oh, and then what happens?
Well, like, when I first heard about that, I was seeing the comments, and there's all these people like, that's not a thing. You can't scan a QR code and then all of a sudden lose all the data on your phone. Well, I think if that QR code directs you to a landing page for an exploit kit, you certainly could.
Yeah, good.
So be careful what you scan, folks. I mean, I don't know how many people, I don't. Do you walk around just scanning QR codes like just randomly?
No.
When I see an interesting one, I might.
What constitutes interesting?
If it looks cool.
But see, that's the thing is like you got to be careful that it's just like clicking on a link, in an email or something like that. You got to be careful that those QR codes are redirecting you to legitimate websites.
Well, I think since the last episode, I have now experimented with Graphene OS, which has a lot of hardening going on, which is I looked up a table of how it compares to Android and Apple for what was the thing they used to get the shooter, the Trump shooter's phone. There's a company that does, when you can't break into a phone, it can break in. And Graphene OS has much stronger resistance, and especially if it's been rebooted to those attacks. But yeah, the Graphene project is amazing, and anyone that is security focused, you should take this as a first step. This is obviously not the end all be all for if you're a journalist in a hostile country where you're actively investigating, high level people that are out to get you. You have to go way further than this because any cell connection, you can be tracked, and there's baseband modems that they can do things on your phone even if you have a hardened OS.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to add this to the news stories, but when you're a journalist, or the government was using this for a long time, but you heard about, and maybe I should just add this to the stories to talk about, but the Telegram CEO.
Yes.
Pavel Durov.
Yes.
He was just arrested in France.
Yes.
And there was
a continued crackdown.
Was it it was, I think, a Tucker Carlson episode where they had Mike Benz talking about his, and I think he used to work for the government, but he was talking about how basically they're trying to coerce him into decrypting or allowing.
Yeah, no, there's a thing about Telegram. So first of all, Telegram was pretty good, but it's also not the greatest because the server, I believe, is proprietary. Signal is one step above because it's open source everywhere. But you still can't necessarily trust the thing you install on your phone because you don't know if someone modified the binary that gets to your phone. But anyways.
Well, that's debatable on whether open source and proprietary are better in terms of privacy, because when you have open source, you've got potentially people developing that source code that are putting in backdoors.
Sure, but you can view the code. But you can't protect when you're getting someone else's compiled version. You don't know that this version is the version. Now, could you do a comparison? Someone takes the source code and then publishes exactly what it should look like, and you could probably go to that level. I don't think anyone was doing that, but if you're focused on security, I guess you would, or you can compile it yourself and then sideload it to your phone. But Telegram's pretty good if you believe what they tell you, and that they don't have control of the end-to-end encryption, right? But what we've got to talk about here is all countries have different laws, right? But people seem to think that the West is universal in its democracy. But anyone that's been following the news, all of the West is becoming more and more totalitarian. The United States, everywhere. But at least the United States does have a First Amendment in the Constitution. None of these other countries, right? But none of these other countries, Britain doesn't even have a constitution. And they were arresting people during the inauguration for having a sign standing there silently saying, "Not my king." Okay, now in France, they can make the case. I don't know if this is going to work with Telegram. They can make the case that if you're running a platform and something bad happens on the platform, you can be complicit. So if you look at the stuff against them, it's saying complicit in child porn stuff, complicit in this, complicit in that. So basically they're pinning everything that's happening on his platform.
Damn.
Because they're supposedly not moderating. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, it's a way to force people to censor.
But this is where, that's why we need decentralized systems. So Telegram still goes to a server. Signal, you can do
peer-to-peer.
more peer-to-peer. So I don't know. But anytime you're relying on some other, centralized thing, they can go after that person or that company and try to get what they need, right?
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. I mean, something big, I think, is going to happen to X, like Elon Musk. You've already seen, and there's multiple facets to the whole X being shut down in Brazil that we talked about before the podcast that we can go into. But, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time. I doubt Elon Musk travels outside the United States because as soon as he sets foot in some country, he's going to get arrested. And it's going to be Pavel Durov and Telegram all over again. But when you don't have that decentralized system that you're talking about, then it's very easy for governments or these authoritarian regimes to go and come up with these charges and try to coerce them into the censorship.
Yeah. Now I will say that Brazil, in Brazil's defense, I'm not saying I agree with everything that's going on, but they did have. If you know the history in the last 5 years, who was the guy, Bolsonaro? He was the one that won in like 2017 with a mass disinformation campaign, and then imprisoned Lula on trumped up charges. And they actually Ryan Greenwald, I believe, was able to break the story that because they got recordings of the conspiracy to put Lula in jail. So his conviction got overturned and he was able to run again. And Bolsonaro, I believe, has an 8-year suspension on running. But they're running another campaign, and the courts are going heavy against what they're calling the disinformation. And if you know anything about their even further past, Brazil got out of their they had a revolution back in the 80s to get out of like a massive, years worth of dictatorship. So they have more strict laws when it comes to these kinds of what they consider election interference, than like we do. So I don't know how this is all going to play out, but all they wanted Elon to do was like 3 or 7 accounts that they said were spreading the quote unquote misinformation, and because he refused. And if anyone's thinking that Musk is a free speech absolutist out there, I will point you to what he did for Turkey. He banned people that Turkey wanted banned, and some other dictator somewhere.
Well,
so he's not a free speech absolutist.
Well, what are these these posts, or what are the specifics behind it?
Yeah, it was something about the election. I don't know. No, whether you agree with that or not, what I'm saying is if you think Musk is making a principled stand, just remember he has banned people for, people he agrees with. He agrees with Turkey, Erdogan, and he agrees with what the other guy is. So he listened to them, but he doesn't listen to Brazil because they're left-wing. That's all I'm saying.
So the guy in Brazil, the Supreme Court, his name is Alexander de Moraes. Does that ring a bell?
I don't know.
Well, he's the one ahead of this shutdown of X.
Yeah, but he asked the 5-panel judge to look at it.
But anyway, I think it's interesting, and this has come up, I think, I've seen it on social media, people acknowledging that, so for instance, last night, the Green Bay Packers played in Brazil. They played the Philadelphia Eagles, and they got smoked. We won't go into that.
I didn't watch.
Fuck the Packers.
Hey, a couple weeks, we're going to talk back with the warden.
Yep, we'll check back in about that, about how the Chicago Bears are dominating the NFC North. But look, okay, so these professional sports, they've relocated games based on political reasons. There's a whole list of examples. For instance, the 1990 NBA All-Star Game was originally supposed to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, but it got moved because North Carolina had a controversial stance on Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. It didn't recognize the holiday, so the NBA moved it to Miami. 2017 NBA All-Star Game, similarly, Charlotte, North Carolina also wanted to have it there. That time they removed it in response to House Bill 2, it was called in North Carolina, Senate, a state bill referred to as the bathroom bill, which restricted the rights of transgender individuals. So the NBA moved because apparently it was bigoted. 1993 Super Bowl 27, originally supposed to be hosted in Tempe, Arizona. NFL moved the Super Bowl to Pasadena after voters rejected a proposal to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a state holiday. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game was supposed to be in Atlanta, Georgia. MLB moved it to Denver after Georgia passed a controversial voting rights law that opponents indicated placed restrictions on voting access for minority communities. This has similarities with the whole debate on national voter ID. And this isn't chronological, of course. I'm just going down the list. But like the
Yeah.
1973 NFL Pro Bowl was supposed to be in New Orleans. That got moved because state laws were restricting black and white players from sharing hotel rooms. Wow, that's archaic.
That's weird.
And 2021 NCAA men's basketball tournament was spread across multiple cities, but they moved that. I mean, that was really just because of COVID, so that's not a great example. But now the NFL decided to send 2 teams to Brazil to market, and expand their reach. But they did this in the wake of, what a lot of people view is Brazil shutting down X in a very authoritarian censorship type of way. So, like, where's the double standard? I mean, you've got all this precedent for teams moving because of all these other reasons. Why didn't the NFL say anything about playing a game in a country that is increasingly authoritarian?
I don't do it at all. Like, they got, 2 things got nothing to do with each other. Like,
well, the other thing is it was planned along, in advance, and I don't think there was that much notice. I saw the headline, like a day before I'm like, okay, I don't think that's going to change.
I know the teams didn't want to go to Brazil at all. I mean, there was a Wisconsin.
They got those British games too.
Dubsnanch. I mean, I think you sent an article saying that there was a Wisconsin representative that was trying to petition the NFL to reschedule and not go to Brazil.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think that. I think that was never going to happen with that short of notice. But I think we just have to, again, look at the fact that this is not a shut Musk down because they wanted to shut Musk down. They had made repeated attempts. Again, you can agree or disagree with the law, but the point is he had a long time to conform to what they were asking. He's conformed to other dictators. I don't think Brazil's a dictator, but they have laws against the election interference. Now, whether these are election interference campaigns going on or, I have no idea. But that's what the alleged is.
Yeah, and we're going to have, we're talking about a whole podcast episode to like talk about the free speech problem.
Yeah, we're trying to line someone up.
I mean, specifically what we're seeing, I think, in Britain lately, but also some of the rhetoric that we've been seeing from the political candidates and, like what the future could hold. I mean, free speech is under attack across the West, not just the United States.
It's getting pretty bad.
And the thing with Brazil, this kind of echoes that. It's the whole, you're not shutting down hate speech and disinformation, or sometimes they term it misinformation, but realistically there's misinformation, disinformation, and there's also another flavor, but they're very different, right? Misinformation is a mistake. Disinformation has a level of complicity in spreading false narrative.
And this is particular with
but
election.
The problem is that once you shut that down, if you're putting restrictions on that, and I think all the legal basis is there in the United States to do that, once the Supreme Court has the right representation, I don't think they do currently. But then you find yourself in a circumstance where now the government determines what is not disinformation.
Well, yeah. So the only thing I want to make sure that we're aware of is Brazil's unique here. So I would say that they're not being authoritative, and they're authoritarian in the way we normally think of authoritarian. But it could prove out to be that it's just being, that they just don't like Musk. But if you look at the history of what they tried to do, they really just wanted Musk to conform to what their law says for these individuals. His repeated conforming to them is what got it here. They didn't just say, we're going to shut down X, right? So it didn't happen like a vacuum. Now, again, I'm not arguing that that's how things should operate.
It's kind of analogous to the United States government saying we're going to shut down TikTok.
Well, yes, that is what the government did. So basically, TikTok was not playing ball. And now TikTok might win because they're suing, to get that reversed. And we'll see what the courts find. But yes, TikTok was allowing news to get to the kids that they don't like. And kids are not watching mainstream news, which is AKA the NSA and, CIA pushing
kids also
propaganda.
Can't vote either.
But they grow up to be voters. And they were getting alternative news sources that the government didn't like. So guess what? TikTok is starting to be a little more censorial now on the topics that the government doesn't like. Maybe to curry favor with the lawsuits. I don't know. But yes, the push to get TikTok out, and when they say that China can look at this account information, and it's like, okay, what do you think Facebook's doing with your account information? It's the same thing. Truth Social and everything else as well is to gather data and profile all of the people on the right. They think it's like where the freedom is, but they're getting profiled, and all the people on the left are going to whatever they're going to, and everyone's getting profiled for everything they're on because these platforms are sucking your data. So it's happening everywhere. But what I would say is, I'm just trying to make sure everyone is aware that in Brazil there are strict laws on the elections. Like, we don't have great laws for. If it was up to me, you'd only be able to advertise for your office in like 30 days before the election. I'm sick of all the ads. It's like all day long, all year long, and you're never out of the election cycle. Other countries have more strict rules around that.
Well, I mean, if I had my way, there'd be some big regulations for debates and things. Because, like, you just look at the last Trump and Biden debate. Like, how often were policy issues really discussed? Like, we heard about golf. We heard a lot of the two, like, disparaging each other. And I think this Tuesday there's going to be another debate. I think it's Trump versus Kamala. I think that's Tuesday night.
And then there's going to be the vice president.
And I guarantee there's going to be nothing. Well, first of all, nothing of substance in terms of policy. And then you're just going to end up, nobody's going to change their minds because everybody's in their echo chamber.
Well, I think we're all old enough to remember when the League of Women Voters were running the debates, and they were much better. Now, the presidential campaigns, there's a nonprofit for the presidential debate, which is basically run by the two parties. And the two parties agree, like, basically put the dictate on what the rules will be. What the hell? Like, you get to decide the rules of your debate instead of having like an independent third party do it. That's where it all went downhill. And so now, it's grandstanding, circle jerks.
Yeah, and as far as social media goes too, just a final point on the final whatever. There's this thing called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and Whorfianism. If you look into it, it's a study that originated, I think, in the 1960s. Part of it has actually been, they've determined that through various studies that, there's some caveats to it. But basically what it says is what kind of stands to reason is that if you continue to vocalize certain narratives, that people will end up believing them.
Yeah, that's weird.
And the studies in particular that kind of refuted some of the aspects of Whorfianism came around the 70s and 80s, where they said that, they were primarily looking at children. And how does speech formulate the worldview of children? And they realized that children actually put together a vast majority of the way they view the world non-verbally. It doesn't have anything to do with, the language that's spoken out in the public, but there's still irrefutable evidence that if you can continue to share these narratives and parrot these things, that especially now we're all caught in our echo chambers, and we're afraid of the cognitive dissonance that we're going to have when we're confronted by opinions or things that, there's this confirmation bias that nobody's open-minded anymore. That's what it all boils down to. It's how often do we go out and challenge ourselves to go and try to understand other viewpoints?
That's where I was telling you about the project I had to do in college with the debate, where you pick your own topic, you and your partner, and we'll do legalization of marijuana. The instructor throws a little curveball and says, "Okay, you're going to do argue against the legalization." So we had to go and research the viewpoint that wasn't mine and present it, and you were graded on whether or not you were able to swing the other side in your debate. So and that was an interesting exercise.
Yes, playing devil's advocate is always good. All right. Well, we know that we want to do a free speech topic, and in addition, the privacy concerns. I've been talking for a while that we need to get someone on to talk about how to do journalism in a hostile foreign nation and what security measures you need to get. So we'll work on those two topics.
What nations aren't hostile toward?
No, I'm talking about where you can end up dead, more hostile.
Greenland.
Although even in America, there was that one guy. I can't remember his name now. Remember, he died in a car crash, and some people say that the CIA or someone might have taken over the car because if it had electronic throttle, then they could hack in.
Yeah,
and-
electronic cars, man.
I know.
That's why you got to carry a USB kill stick wherever you go.
Yes.
But that still has to be tested because, like, it's all like
I'll
it's a
stick it in your
hypothetical.
car and see what happens.
Well, yeah, we need to get somebody with a car that wants to, like, you know,
Donate it to the.
yeah, to the cause because those electrical systems may be segmented.
All right. Well, here's
So you fry all your electronics, but then the government still
can take
steering
can
you into a car
accelerate you.
crash. But I think what you're referring to is like Khashoggi, like who was he? Washington Post and Saudi Arabia goes in there and he gets
that. Well, that was
killed?
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. Yeah. He's
a
one.
journalist
He's one.
that goes to Saudi and then
Yeah, that was one. But there's journalists all over that get disappeared. But all right, this is from PennLive.com. Rock frontman taken down by a SWAT team after standoff with police, and this is the West Sintlin, the frontman for Puddle of Mud. I'm not familiar with his name. I didn't know that's his name. I know Puddle of Mud, but yeah. So he was arrested this week after a standoff with police following a traffic stop. And when I say this week, this article is from August 4th. 52-year-old was reportedly stopped in Burbank, California, when police realized he also had an outstanding warrant for having a weapon at an airport. That is when they reportedly, well, if it's in his luggage, you can do that. But anyways, that is when they reportedly asked him to step out of his Hummer, and he refused.
Or maybe they asked him for a Hummer because you know,
So yes, that escalated into him eventually being taken down by a SWAT team, and it was actually pretty bad. It's crazy. Yeah, so that's Puddle of Mud. Haven't heard of them doing much lately, but hope he's all right. All right.
never cared for that band. Puddle of Mud playing it. So there was Tool playing at Tool playing at Home Depot.
Yeah, Third Eye Blind live at Lens Crafters.
All right.
Where was Puddle of Mud playing?
I don't
feel
think
like-
they're part of those.
I feel like
They got to be playing something.
in some puddle. I feel like we already talked about this, but maybe not. Fox5DC.com. NFL implements new facial recognition for working staff in stadiums. And that was freaking people out because it's basically going to, take everyone that's in there, and who knows what they're going to do with that. But, yeah, so if you go to an NFL game, they're going to be watching you.
So what do you think? Is the NFL going to be on Amazon or AWS again this year? We're going to have the advanced
are they?
analytics. Do you remember last year?
I never saw it, but you were talking about it.
I thought it was crap.
So it was like Thursday night games. You could log in if you had an Amazon Prime account. You could log into the normal stream that Amazon was broadcasting, or they had the advanced analytics stream.
Yeah.
Where they would show the names, like hovering on the players. They would highlight probable blitzers based on,
Something.
intelligence or data analytics. And I noticed that 99% of the time they were wrong. The blitzers were never blitzing.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is it going to be on next Thursday on Amazon? Because it wasn't this time, right? The opening week was not.
It's all getting fucked up because, like, I know MLB, they've moved some of their games to, like, Apple TV, which pisses me off. It's like you got to have an Apple TV subscription to watch some games.
Why are they doing this?
And then Peacock, especially, like, so any game on NBC is also on Peacock. But once you get to, like, playoffs, like, they'll stop showing it on NBC. And if you're not in the local market, you're going to have to pay for Peacock to get certain games.
Oh, my gosh.
Doesn't YouTube have an offering for sport games too? Or
Well, they got Sunday Ticket, which I pay for good or bad. But I get the games. But that doesn't protect me from Peacock games.
Peacock.
So I got to have a fucking Peacock.
It doesn't protect you. Wait, the ticket doesn't get you the.
No. If NBC has the rights to a game and they stream it on Peacock, it's not going to be covered on Sunday Ticket. So you pay like $400 a year to get fucking NFL. It's fucking. Dude, this shit's getting ridiculous, man.
Yeah, all the contracts are stupid.
TV never used to be
This complicated?
Yeah. It used to be like local stations, get the ants on the screen, and you got the rabbit ears, but you can pull in 4 or 5 stations and you get your football game.
more foil on those antennas.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think everyone knows about this by now, but obviously, Tom'sGuide.com, 4.3 million people hit with massive healthcare data breach with full names, addresses, and SSNs. And then this is in addition to the Social Security breach that happened from the what was it called? Whatever company was doing background checks. So just massive amounts of data with your previous addresses on those. So this one was all just with healthcare, health savings account. If you have a HSA for medical expenses, the company was Health Equity, disclosed it's suffered a data breach. Now the Social Security number 2.9 billion, which people ask about that number because there's not that many people that live in America, but you got to look at the fact that there could be duplicates, there could be, people that are dead and all this stuff. But TomsGuide.com, 2.9 billion, hit full names, addresses, social security numbers, and previous addresses, because this was a company that did background checks and apparently never, kept things protected and maybe never got rid of old data either.
So needs to give them a background check.
Right. You need to background check.
Yeah, nationalpublicdata.com.
That's it.
But within the last few years, I went through multiple federal background checks for work. And I just got a notification a week ago that my social security number is on the dark web.
Oh, yeah, so it's
Thanks,
on there.
Shitty fucking government and company.
Yeah, I downloaded that, weeks ago?
You download my social security?
No, I got it from them.
So who's gonna take my social security number? I think they're gonna start giving. The thing is about so they said there was billions stolen. There's only 330 million people in the United States, right? So the rationale is that some of these records go back decades. Okay, so there's dead people. They have
they care about their data being.
But I mean, they can resurrect some of these records and give them out to illegal immigrants.
Sure.
Might as well use them for something.
I mean, maybe that's the plan. Maybe this is part of the elitist conspiracy.
So here's some more concerning stuff from BBC.com. September 6th, scientists grow whole model of human embryo without. Oh, this is from last year. How did this get sent to us? Without an egg, sperm, or a womb. Now, I don't know what this is about, but I know that we shouldn't be doing it. So this is like a model of an embryo. They're trying to find ways to get embryos without them coming from sperms and eggs, so that it can be supposedly more controversial when they do experiments on them.
Seems like it'd be more controversial.
I don't know.
To me,
It's weird. It's weird. Yeah, this is from a year ago, so I don't know. This got into our mix here.
Just keep with your stem cell research and keep it to duplicating Shakey's Pizzas around the nation.
Shakey's Pizzas. When I was in California, we were actually down the street from a Shakey's, but
there was a Shakey's
never
there?
open. Yeah, it wasn't open by the time we left, and I didn't want to stick around to wait for them to open.
The old scarf and barf.
Yeah.
What do they have? Those potato things. What are those called?
Hojos.
Hojos.
Or
Mojos.
Mojo.
I still
One of the two.
I remember in high school, I beat the fattest kid in class in an eat-off at Shakey's. And I beat him by one Mojo.
Oh, those are so good.
I'm sure that's on your resume.
I don't know if he was the fattest kid, but he was pretty fat.
All right, so TMJ4.com. Workers, quote, pretty nervous after Harley Davidson moves work from Wisconsin to Thailand. Yes, Harley Davidson. The iconic company that got government protections in the 80s to stay in business is starting to move some people offshore. This is more of the same that we've been seeing from companies through the last, 30, 40 years.
Well, and from a company perspective, why wouldn't you? Cheap labor.
But that's the thing. Then you don't end up with anything in America. That's the bottom barrel. And if we don't do something to protect our manufacturing, we're not going to have it. Well, we barely have any now. But.
Well, that's not so like Honda. Like for instance, but if you buy a Honda vehicle, it's not made in Japan and brought over here.
They do have places here. Yes, they do have factories in
down
the
south.
south.
Yes,
Yes,
Well, I mean, it's been like this for decades.
my Honda was made in Canada.
Thomas Friedman from the New York Times that wrote all those books like The Lexus and the Olive Tree, he detailed that, hey, the globalization is multinational companies and their supply chain, they have facilities in multiple countries.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to build a car and ship it overseas where you could just say, here's the blueprints, here's how you make our engines, here's how you make this stuff. You make it over there, put it together over there. It's still ours.
Yeah, but the point is, if we are getting rid of our manufacturing, we're already industrialized.
Depends what manufacturing. What? Like what?
Well, in this case,
specific
motorcycles,
parts?
but
the whole motorcycle.
Well, I mean, they're just moving some. I mean, I don't know when.
Well, it may not be the whole
cut it off.
motorcycle. I mean, I think traditionally Harley's assembled and done most of it here in the United States.
Yeah.
But if you're going to a more globalization model, They're going to find where the cheapest labor is to
Yeah, but
assemble
that's-
components here in this country, ship them to this country, and
Yeah.
Or it's cheaper to like make this part in this country, so like we'll make this particular part of the motorcycle here.
Yeah, but
I mean, it makes
that
sense.
creates our massive problem that we have now, where we have a web of supply chains all over that collapsed during the pandemic, and the fact that we have no industrial base like we used to. So we that's why our poverty is rising, and I mean it's just more globalization that's causing the bottom dollar. China's rising, we're falling.
And I'm not going to say that globalization like is completely evil. There's been some pros to it, but you're right. It collapsed during COVID. Like it exposed a weakness in the supply chains, and I mean everybody's economy suffered during COVID. Every single country, right? But what's the solution? What's the solution to keeping manufacturing?
Well, we don't need to let them leave. we just allow them to. This is what makes our country live. We don't have to say, okay, fine.
So
you're
is
gone.
it government regulation to prevent companies from outsourcing?
Well, basically, if a company wants to leave, right, the government could come in and say, okay, well, sure, you go over there and make that, but we're now taking over this factory, and we're going to give the workers the ability to run
Or
it themselves.
tax the hell out of it so it's not.
Well,
financially-
that's tariffs. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that. Yeah, tariffs, protectionism, but why not just seize the factory, take it back, let the workers do it?
But if the companies move the manufacturing from a factory, the factory is vacant. Why would the government seize the factory?
No, you don't let them take it. Say you leave, you go do that.
Now
We're
we own
taking
your-
this
now we
over,
own
and
your
we're
factory?
making the same product like we were
That's-
before.
Well, I don't think you want the
Well,
government.
these
yeah.
companies are.
What you end up with is
Shitty
I'm not going to
products.
say communism.
Well, no.
You're going to end up with what Russia has, where like a lot of the core commodities, or I should say more like the energy, for instance, like it's all run by oligarchs. Okay,
Well,
the government
they are
doesn't
here.
run it, but there's a bunch of choice oligarchs that are controlling things. I mean,
The
I think-
oligarchy's running us.
yeah, it is.
But no. What I'm saying is, so we have the Defense Production Act, right? Trump threatened to use it. He, from what I remember, didn't actually use it on the companies that were.
Well, he's talking about tariffs now.
No,
I mean, there's a
that's
big
yeah.
debate
He
on
did
it.
some of that, but the Defense Production Act means that you can tell a company basically to make something that you need, but in addition, you can prevent factories from closing. You can do all this stuff. So we could have used that, because when we lose all of our production base, we have already seen that China can now do everything. They've taken all the shit that we gave them because we put all of our manufacturing over there, and now we can't produce anything. So if companies are still going to keep leaving America, they're traders basically. We can say, okay, now we're giving this factory over to the workers. They're going to keep working and making the stuff that you used to make, but now it's not going to come from you. We're going to rebrand and we're going to call it something else, and tough shit.
Or would it, but then the flip side, like you own a manufacturing company, and prices in America are kind of starting to rise up, and be like, hey, we're trying to save this for consumer. Like
That's
okay,
what
we
they
keep
say,
it
but the
in-house,
price never
but-
goes down. They keep raising it.
So you're saying that if a company moves, we seize their factories, and then we create a co-op to compete with them.
We just let the workers get it, yeah.
But do you think a co-op could really be competitive?
They'd be more competitive because you won't have the retards running it like
but
they do
run
now.
by the government.
No, not the government. The workers know how to run it more than the managers. You
Well-
all work in management, or
Well,
you've seen it.
I mean, it's something that has to be explored.
Why
Like,
do you think the car companies, the American cars, have gone to shit? If they let engineers and the floor people run the stuff, they would actually make cars that were good. The MBAs have made the quality of the cars shit, so that you have to buy new things every 6 months. Oh, look, my handle broke off because this thing's a piece of shit.
Yeah, but that increases their profitability.
Yeah, I know that.
So if you have a co-op that's producing better shit, people are going to like it, but they're not going to be spending as much money,
Well,
and then that
but
company's
it'll be
going to fail.
sustainable. No. See, we've been tricked into thinking that every quarter stock must go up. It doesn't need to go up. You just need to make a profit. That's the bottom line of companies. You need to make a profit. You don't have to grow forever, for eternity. That's just what MBAs want. I'm just saying.
Well,
man.
that's what the stock market wants.
Take them private. Go private. It's off the market now. You're done. I don't know, man. This is what's killing our economy.
Speaking of the stock market, I want to go off on a tangent here, and I want to know your guys' opinions on. So Kamala Harris has said that she wants to tax unrealized capital gains. Now, technically, and this is not, people are not being fair to what she's proposing, that she's saying that only people that make $100 million or more are going to be subject to this tax.
Okay.
Okay. So for the vast majority of us, this is not going to affect us because at face value, you think, holy crap, I got money in the stock market. And now every time my stock goes up, I have to pay a tax on that.
Right.
That's not reality.
Right.
So a lot of people are saying, oh, we shouldn't care. This is a tax on the rich. Well, there's two things I'm concerned about. Number one, they said the same thing about income tax 140 years ago. And now we're all paying income tax because it was supposed to be the richer people.
Or the poor pay the income tax. The rich pay almost nothing.
But the point is,
it reversed.
When income tax started, it was supposed to be a tax on the rich.
Correct. There was actually you didn't even start paying until you were at a level.
And we grew into it.
Yes, yeah. No, I get you.
Now, I don't know how long it would take us to grow into $100 million of net worth.
Well, they should tie it to inflation too, so the number always goes up and doesn't have to be.
Well, the problem with inflation is like we talked about on a podcast like several episodes ago, where you've got the government manipulating all the metrics. Like, inflation's a bullshit argument because of all the hedonics and stuff that we talked about. Like, it's just completely manipulated.
But if you start with a number of 100 million and you write in the law that it'll increase by inflation, at least you don't have to go back and repass laws because the poverty wage is still, what is it, like 20 or 10 grand? Like, it's insanely low, and it's never moved with inflation. So you have to like do multipliers when you make laws for helping poor. You say if you're like 3 times the poverty level, so like you need to put in the laws the inflation adjustment. But no, I understand your point. Could they like reverse that and start to tax more and more people? They might.
Or it's a foot in the door and they start making more aggressive to where it's affecting more people. But my bigger concern is, what does it do to the stock market? If the stock market is heavily controlled by the people that are the volume. The majority of the volume in the stock market is run by machines. The ultra rich.
It's computers mostly, yeah.
Well, I mean, those are the mechanisms, but the people that have the capital invested in the stock market are the richest people. So what happens when you say that if you play the stock market, your net worth is $100 million or more?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we're going to penalize you for that. What are they going to do? They're probably going to pull some of their assets out of the stock market and putting them into other markets across the world.
Crypto.
Doesn't that have a negative effect on the NASDAQ, all those, and therefore our 401ks are going to go through the floor? So even if it's not affecting us directly, it's going to fuck us indirectly.
Well, right. Okay. So the stock market's already a problem, and it's probably going to collapse soon. I mean, not permanently. It'll probably take a big shit. And you know that Warren Buffett just pulled out bazillions out of...
Yeah, watch Pelosi and Buffett and all the big wigs. Cause
he's already sold a bunch of shit. But no, what would happen is just like how we should tax stock trades to prevent all of the... because the rich do like these automated... They just try to make like a few pennies or whatever on every million shares. And if you taxed each trade, it would prevent them from just doing these massive, like, I want to make, a penny off a million shares and, eventually I make a shit ton.
Like every day or a couple times a day, like messing around with it.
Yeah. So,
if
they move their capital, right, which could happen, we shouldn't be so invested in the stock market. The stock market's horribly inflated. It's a bubble. But I mean, I know what you're saying. Your 401ks will take a shit if they collapse. We shouldn't be invested in the 401ks is the problem.
Well, I mean, I think most logical people who are investing have a diversified portfolio, and you might have IRAs and stocks here, and you might be investing in gold, blah blah blah. But what you're saying is, okay, we need to reform the stock market, fine, but that has to be done carefully because it's so volatile that any small reform, and I wouldn't call a tax on unrealized capital gains reform, but it's a major change. And what I'm worried about is if they do that, it doesn't affect us directly. But as soon as that impact is felt by the richest people that have the most volume in the stock market and they start making major fucking moves, that's when the bubble's going to fucking burst, and we're all fucked.
I think it's going to burst before that. But no, I mean, it probably would cause some problems if they did that. Right. No, I agree.
I think it could be catastrophic, but
But at the end, it's going to mean less of that giant bubble being put in there. Now, that's assuming the law would stay. That it would probably get reversed with the next, freaking presidential candidate. But all these things that try to attack the rich, what's going to happen is when the other party gets in control, they're going to roll them back unless there's an actual revolution that gets the people back in control and has a sane tax policy where we actually have everyone paying their fair share. So I don't know how else to go after there's what were some of the theories they wanted to try? Well, they can't do a wealth tax because it sounds like the Supreme Court would probably toss that out.
A what tax?
A wealth tax. Just like you've got bazillions in assets here, you got to pay this. But right now, because of the income tax, we're getting punished by working. Wage workers get punished.
Well, it's a double dip too. So you get your wages, you get income tax on your wages. Now you take your wages and you go buy something.
And you have
pay sales tax. So
yes. Meanwhile, the rich, if you make like millions in income, let's say you're an actual like a TV star that makes income tax and you get $1 million because you're a news reporter on MSNBC or some shit, you don't pay as much tax as we do. You pay the top bracket, but you don't pay after Social Security is capped at like $160,000. After 160, they don't pay anything on that. And then if you're rich and you make no income,
they don't pay into Social Security
only
anymore.
up the first $160,000. So if they're making millions, they don't pay above that. Now,
no wonder why Social Security is garbage.
Well, right. That's why they need to close those gaps. But if you're not making any income and you're just rich living off dividends, you don't pay Social Security at all. But yet you get to take Social Security when you're old.
And no wonder why it's like.
Well, I mean, I don't think their benefit that they take, but they don't need it.
But but they can get it. That's the thing.
I mean, I'm all for like progressive income taxes, and I think there's like logical things you can do that we're not doing today.
Well, isn't it kind of like that today though? Like the first $30,000 that you make in a year is taxed. Like Bill Gates gets taxed that same amount on his first $30,000.
But he doesn't actually make income, so he doesn't get taxed. He gets dividends.
Well, yeah,
dividends are 15%. So one of the things that Kamala wants to do is raise the capital gains taxes in general. So it'd be 28%, I think, she's looking at. So that's a good step. It's not going to fix.
No, I heard it was like 22 to 45% capital gains, but maybe I'm confusing that with the unrealized, because that's being talked about in tandem with the unrealized capital gains, which is, for anybody who doesn't understand, that's where like you have, an investment, for instance, or you have a commodity like an asset that is appreciating in value. You don't actually have that money because that money is just floating out there and it fluctuates. And if the value of your asset or your investment goes up, you would have to go and pay a tax on that. Now, if it lost value, you wouldn't recoup that money.
It would be a loss. Well, you'd claim it as a loss.
Yeah, you're right. You could probably claim a deduction or a credit on taxes, but it's not going to make up for what you've lost in
Wait, does this happen if you like your investment, you leave your money in this set investment? So if it goes up, you don't get anything?
Well, up or down, you'd be able to claim.
So, for instance, and again, let me be clear, what she's talking about is a tax for people whose net worth is $100 million or more. But if you had $100 million and you have, say, $100,000 in a stock, and the stock goes up, and now it's worth $150 million total of all the shares you have, you would have to pay a tax on the $50,000 or at the end of the year.
Even if you leave it in the stock market, don't pull it out.
You don't pull it out.
So unrealized.
It's unrealized.
Okay.
Now, if it then you paid taxes on the $50,000 or whatever I said, and then the next year it goes down to $80,000.
That'd be
you might be able
unrealized loss, maybe.
Yeah, but you don't recoup all that money. The best you could hope for is hypothetically there would be something in the tax code that you could get a credit or a deduction on.
Something, but yeah.
So do you see how fucked up that is?
But they're also, and Trump and Kamala are both pitching no tax on tips, which until Reagan wasn't even tracked. They didn't track tips before that. Reagan instituted that. So that would be good for people that make tips.
And let me just say that Trump had the idea, and then Kamala stole it.
Well, a lot of people have had that idea. So she might be adopting it as well, but it wasn't like a Trump invention. That's been something that people have been bitching about since Reagan did that.
Or you just don't report your tips and don't
Reagan
worry about
also
it.
did something that fucked up.
I just see him coming out with popular ideas that she's co-opting, and I think that it's genius by her campaign, because he's trying to appeal to the moderates or the independents. Is like, hey, I'm doing things for the people, and if she co-opts that, like, she basically undermines like that strategy he's got. So,
well, I think any of her progressive ideas are coming from Tim Walz personally, but I don't know, or Bernie.
And I think so, but like, I'm hoping in the debate on Tuesday that she lays out some of those policies, because there hasn't been a lot of talk about it right now. It's just like, you got this unlikable guy named Trump. We can't let him get into the White House again. That's what it's been about.
That's just the way it is. The way the he said, she said shit.
Yeah,
all right,
or Comrade Kamala. You know, it's like what I miss the days where you had two presidential candidates that like it was respectful candor. You know,
yeah, that was long. That
like,
ship sailed.
Now it's more like an episode of like The Real World or
It's
something.
like look at it, like it's idiocracy, man.
Yes, it is. That movie it was predicting the future. All right, we're way off topic here, but we got a few choice articles, Mongoose. What do you want to go over before we call the headlines here?
Well, on a lighter note, I came across an article today about two guys that walked into Miami Airport.
Yes, wrapped in plastic. It's like a gimp suit.
So the one guy was wrapped in green plastic wrap at Miami International Airport. This is August 31st.
Looks like a
this
condom.
is like a week ago. The guy tried to check his friend in his luggage. At the South American airline LATAM, and everybody was confused, including the people at the desk. It was kind of a comedy sketch, they said, but his companion, taking the prank seriously, placed him on a baggage scale to weigh him. Afterward, the shrink-wrapped individual made a hasty departure from the counter, only to be later unwrapped by local police. And they have this on video.
I applaud the creativeness there.
But I don't know if this is a fact, but somebody was saying that the guy was trying to identify as a package.
Why would it?
Here we go.
Did they package his package? So why did they unwrap?
But even his legs were wrapped, so when like he was trying to get away, he was hopping through the airport.
You didn't think all that fully through.
I urge everybody to watch this video. It's fucking hilarious. And even the cops were having a good time with it. But no, you cannot. Apparently, you cannot be
Baggage.
saran wrapped and checked into luggage. That probably wouldn't be safe.
Well, what if you're like properly like in a certain a box with the weight properly labeled and like this end up and like
You're not going to survive unless you're declared like a live animal. Like, they don't put you in the pressurized.
Well, that's up to the person. Like you want to take that risk. You want to roll. You want to take a flight. And you want to not sit in a chair. And you want to roll around in the bottom and smash in other boxes. That's on you. But the that's on you attitude in America is pretty much gone.
And the best part about this is the guy that was trying to check his friend in is just total matter of fact. And like he wasn't laughing or anything. He was just like, why is this a problem?
Yeah, what's going on here? You've never tried this?
So CNN.com, scientists' discovery that turns mouse skin transparent echoes plot of H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man.
Yes.
So this chemical isn't it like something that's in Doritos? Let me see here.
Ranch Doritos, right?
Oh, Muskrat hates Ranch Doritos.
I can now eat them again. Even though I couldn't eat them for years after I puked in a third grade Super Bowl.
I always had the same problem with Apple Jack cereal when I was a kid. I used to drink a lot of Apple Jack cereal, and then I puked it up, and yeah.
So
Mine was Kessler.
oh,
Well, I have a couple alcohol stories too. I thought we were talking about non-alcohol like snacks and cereals.
they combined yellow dye, which is a molecule that absorbs most light, especially blue and ultraviolet, with skin, which is a scattering medium, and who conducted the study
Kellogg's.
as postdoctoral researcher at Stanford University. Individually, these block most light from getting through them. But when put together, we were able to achieve transparency of the mouse skin. That's really gross. Once you had the dye completely diffused into the skin became transparent. So they're saying they're going to be able to like look inside people and do stuff with it. I don't know.
Well, maybe, yeah. Instead of having like a surgery, we're like, well, we need to cut you open and see maybe what's going on inside you. Like, hey, we'll just spray this stuff on your stomach and then come back in like a couple hours and we'll take a look and you can see it too. We'll all look at it.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know, man.
See where it goes. We'll keep an eye on that one.
Uh-huh.
I might have some fun uses for something like that too.
Yeah. Well, anyways. So that's going on.
Sweet.
So what's your use case for that, Dubstanch?
I guess, they're going to just do...
Well, let's see how this develops. And I don't want to be discussing that right now. There could be some patents or money. I mean,
creepy bastard.
Not being creepy. I'm just looking for money-making opportunities that are creative based on current events.
Yeah, it's so weird. All right. Well, anyways. All right, we're over here, but I will say that AT&T, the Register reports AT&T is suing Broadcom for breaking VMware support extension contract. They had an agreement that if they extended the contract before the end of whatever date, they would get it. But Broadcom is trying to force them to buy this other garbage.
Broadcom's still around?
Well, yeah, they bought VMware, and it's effing everything
right,
up.
yeah.
Yeah. And we're gonna see soon in their quarterly report whether they're actually they're keeping their promise, because they said that every quarter is gonna see growth now because they're trying all these effed up jacking of all the prices. But I know a lot of people are getting pissed, and I think you're gonna see an exodus of VMware. All right. Anything else we need? Oh, well, RTX, which is Raytheon, fined $200 million for leak of F-22, F-35, B-2, E-3, and other aircraft data to Russia, Iran, China. And
Well, like they didn't want to make those things already.
and they claim they can, and it sounds like they might only get fined $100 million, because if they pinky promise to invest $100 million in protecting data, then they don't have to pay the full $200 million. This is so bad.
Okay, what about? Oh, it's the herpes monkeys. Shit. That's what I heard. They're coming.
Herkies.
What about the anti-aging drug?
Oh, did we talk about that yet?
No, we didn't. Mashable News, August 20th, 2024. Anti-aging drug saves dying 12-year-old dog. U.S. millionaire excited for human trials.
Oh, it's so bad.
In 2025.
This is going to be bad.
So, revolutionary drug just saved 2 aging dogs from death, and humans will be next. According to a recent study conducted in the U.S., a new age reversal pill has shown remarkable results on a 12-year-old German Shepherd. And I think German Shepherds, chronic hip dysplasia, like they don't live much longer than 12, 14 years, typically, I don't think.
Yeah, it was acting like younger and everything.
So this pill, it lengthens telomere caps. And if you look at stem cells, aging is apparently analogous or associated with every time there's a cell division, the telomeres get shorter, and that is how aging is manifest at the genetic level or the cellular level.
This is going to usher in a whole bunch of problems if this comes through. But in addition, I believe the doctor behind the research recently died too, so I think that's a little sus. But yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. So 2 thoughts I have. Number one, you're actually lengthening telomeres. I don't know about lengthening. Like, what are the implications of lengthening telomeres? Like, I could see, okay, like you're slowing the decline or the shortening of telomeres, but is there some implication, or is, what happens when you lengthen them? That sounds like maybe the zombie apocalypse waiting to happen.
That's what some people think might be happening, yeah. But
also, I just lost my train of thought because I lost it. There was something. It has something to do with Elon Musk.
He'll probably take.
Yeah, I don't know. You might have to cut this part out. Shit.
All right.
Anyway, move on.
Well, I think that's all we got for the headlines on Saturday, September 7th, 2024. When we get back, we'll be talking about the implications of whatever the hell's going down in Aurora. All right. Be back shortly.
Hank Hurlson here, proprietor of Baked Beans and Books and Furries Wear Boots. Did you ever wonder how many bites it would take to get to the bottom of a giant vat of baked beans? Well, I tried it once, but all the beans kept collapsing in on the hole I was making. I ate the whole vat. Stop on down to Baked Beans and Books to get yourself a heaping handful of baked beans and peruse the selection of books. While you're at it, stop at Furries Wear Boots. 11111 State Street, Madison, Wisconsin. Baked Beans and Books. When books just aren't enough.
All right, we're back. It is Saturday, September 7th, 2024. All right. Now, we do have Just one email we're gonna read. I'm already drinking my beer still, so the American Stout. What is it called? Bold Assumptions. It's good stuff.
What are your bold assumptions?
My bold assumption is that we are not going to make 12 episodes this year, but I might be wrong.
Where are we at right now,
I don't know.
including this one?
Let's see here. What are we at? We are at 2024. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
We could do
Not
it.
as far behind as I thought, but
Actually, we're right on pace.
Well, September, and where we should be. This is the 8th one.
Wait, this
this
is
is the 8th
Yeah,
one,
we're one behind.
according to my count.
Unless we're cramming another one this month yet. We have 1 month. Has
Well,
to be
we had
double.
like 3 in July, I think. Is that what happened? I think we kind of.
We're all over the place.
Yeah, 3 in July, and then nothing for years.
All right.
Or,
So Muskrat, does that beer make you more impulsive?
I don't know why.
Well, it's bold
'Cause
assumptions.
I'm assuming things boldly. All right, I got one email that came through.
Hold on. I'm drinking Miller Lite, and I feel lighter the more I drink.
The reason I'm using this email today is because so it's a recommendation on a topic, and so instead of sending us, I mean, other people send us topics, but I never know what to think about some of the times they're asking about topics. This one is a little bit more fully fleshed out. So they write, good evening. They were listening to the James Corbett episode, and he thinks he's got a good topic for us. Noster. Now, has anyone heard of this? Because it kind of rang a bell, but I had to go look it up. Nostr.
Yeah, is it Noster or Noster?
Yeah, I don't know how it's pronounced.
That rings a bell too, but
I know there's a Nostradamus app for it, but so Nostr or Noster is a social network protocol that is truly censorship resistant, has no owners, no big company behind, and unlike most other idealistic protocols out there, its tech is simple enough that it has a chance of working. Weirdly, it has received support from people like Jack Dorsey and Edward Snowden. I'm involved with it, and I can recommend some good guests that can dive deep into the technology and how such a simple scheme can actually achieve censorship resistance. If you're interested, let me know. I did reach back out to them saying, hit me up with some people to talk about this, or if they want to. I have not heard back yet. So that is something that I did a cursory review on, and it looks very interesting. So I was going to actually install it. I have not done that yet.
So for
yeah.
anything censorship resistant, it has to be decentralized.
Yes, this is. So if you take a quick look at it, it's a very interesting. I mean, I haven't dug into the details, but it is a interesting way of working. You start off by creating a key signature, I believe, cert signature, if I remember correctly. I did a quick look when the email came in. Simple open protocol that enables global decentralized and censorship-resistant social media, and it's based on flexible events, objects, blah blah blah. Elliptic cryptography for keys and signing, and the only supported transport is WebSockets connections from client to relays. This makes it easy to write clients and relays and promote software diversity. It's really interesting when you look at how you set it up. I want to try it. So, yeah.
But it starts with you generate a key signature. You said so. It's like, is that like a private key that's specific to
you create your own key, so then people can verify it's you, and then that's what you use, and you make sure you keep the private key private, and then you just start going out there, and people can verify it's you, and yeah, I think it's
but not directly,
concept.
right? Because I mean, you're not sharing your private key with everybody.
They don't know who you whatever entity you create. they know that entity is the entity based on the cert. It doesn't have to be.
Is there any
individual.
Is there any interlinkage, so to speak, with like blockchain technology?
I think it has to do with that. Is it actually using a blockchain? I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't know. Look into the.
That is super interesting.
Yeah, look into the page. It was. I started looking through like a YouTube video, and I looked up some web pages that talk about it.
Because like I was saying before, I think we were talking about this before the podcast today, but I hate censorship. I am of the opinion that all speech should be allowed, and that there should be a war of ideas, and that reasonable people should win out. But there's also flaws with that argument too, right? Because generally peaceful people aren't, they can be overwhelmed by a violent majority, and so like not everybody's willing to stand up for that. But I think generally speaking, if people are bold enough to share their ideas,
bold assumptions,
and yeah. Anyway, censorship's bad. That's what I think.
Yeah. So this is a more it's very interesting. So I am curious about it, and I will be looking at it and seeing how that goes.
Let's do it up.
So, all right. Email show packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Packetsandbolts@gmail.com.
Is that the only email?
Well, that's the one I picked because it actually had a in-depth. So instead of someone just saying like cover UFOs or do this or do that. They actually had
threats against
an
us?
actual idea. I don't think there's threats.
We blacklisted Billy D. Right? We're censoring him.
He's gonna hear you at some point. We're not censoring him.
Good.
I'm not.
I mean, I don't know. Careful what you wish for.
But yeah, this one had like a more in-depth reason why we should do it. So we will dig into it, and if you're listening, you should speak to it yourself or point us in a direction of someone that can talk to it.
Do it up.
All right. So that brings us to the topic at hand. We are talking Aurora, Colorado, and a negligent building place and armed people roaming, doing things.
It's been a big topic in the news, and I think it's polarizing. It's extremely interesting, and it's not just about the apartment complex. It's about the gang that's being, discussed in the news. That's supposedly responsible for this stuff. Tren de Aragua.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be super objective about this, so like nobody from that gang needs to target Packets and Bolts. Okay, so just putting that out there.
So what we know is that the story went widespread with the notion that the apartment complex was seized, and that part, in terms of being seized like some sort of military campaign, was walked back or silently walked back, depending on the news agency. But then it shifted quickly to just the issue of the gangs itself, which I don't know of anyone that's disputing the existence of the gangs in that area. And then you combine that with the fact that the building management company has basically just let the place, rot. But the issue at hand, if we're talking about gang members, and I don't know, is there like a protection racket going on, or I know that the officials of the city, and I don't know if this is the cops or the city like management, they basically said that the management company of the apartment is nowhere. No one knows where they went, and the residents were basically not paying anyone. They were just kind of living there because the management company went AWOL. So the cops have picked up, increased their presence to make sure there is no, whatever risk of potential violence, etc. I'm not saying that alone is going to fix it. If it's a gang problem, that doesn't necessarily take care of the issue. But beyond that, what else are the facts on the ground here that we've got?
Well, let's just start as a background and just talk about the gang itself. That is being talked is being talked about in the news. They're saying that watch out. This gang is engaging illegal activity in multiple big cities. Denver, obviously, and Aurora is a suburb of Denver. So, obviously that's like first in the news, but they're supposedly in Chicago, New York. They're along the southern border. They have been for a couple of years, but supposedly they're infiltrating. But the timeline of Tren de Aragua, from what I've found, goes back to, they don't have a long history. It appears that they just kind of cropped up in the early 2010s in Venezuela. This is a Venezuelan gang, all right? But they actually began, as far as I can tell, in 2012 as a local trade union in the state of Aragua, which is where they derive their name from. Eventually, it evolved into a full-fledged crime syndicate, ramping up their criminal activities. They had a big presence, due to some legal issues inside the Tocoron prison in Venezuela. They operated under the leadership of a man named Nino Guerrero. His real name's Hector. They started participating in illicit activities within the prison, including drug trafficking, extortion. And that kind of ramped up between 2012 and 2018. Just a side note, I'm thinking that this might be the new Al-Qaeda.
Ooh,
That's a bold
Or Al-Qaeda.
it's a bold assumption.
Well, America needs an enemy, right?
You think they're going to be pitched as that? I don't know if they were going to be. If that was going to be the plan, wouldn't there be a more aggressive response from law enforcement and military?
I don't know. It's interesting because on the one hand, you arguably have an administration that's letting people in, and the figures suggest that illegal immigration is dropping recently. But some people say that that's because the illegals being diverted to legal points of entry and just being allowed through without being processed. So it's a big mess. But yeah, we need an enemy. Where's the weapons of mass destruction, guys? So anyway, 2018.
Just wait.
2018, 6 years ago? Tren de Aragua expanded beyond Venezuela. They leveraged the migrant crisis to spread their influence across South America. They established a presence in Colombia and began engaging more in human trafficking, extortion, drug smuggling. Between 2018 and 2021, they grew into a major criminal network with operations in Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, in addition to where they, Venezuela and Colombia. Human smuggling, sex trafficking, violent crimes. And then in 2023, that's when their international expansion reached its peak. They moved operations to Mexico, in a large part because there was a crackdown in Venezuela that some people will say was the regime in Venezuela emptying their prisons. On the other hand, there's evidence to suggest that the organized syndicate was given a heads up before they were raided so that they could be forced out or take advantage of the migrant crisis and move into other countries. But they set up operations close to the U.S. border that started coming across as part of this immigration crisis we have. Of course, there's all that talk about the Darien Gap and how we have just record illegal immigrants coming across, notwithstanding Islamic terrorists and things like that they're talking about. Of course, obviously, there's still asylum seekers and people fleeing, the socialist regime in Venezuela, things like that. The rapid expansion, again, part of Maduro's regime. The operation was actually part of a security initiative that they called the Cacique Guacupuro Liberation Operation. Mm-hmm. So that was apparently Venezuela's attempt to dismantle, but again, there's evidence that they warned the syndicate that this was going to happen before it happened. That facilitated their international expansion. And then in July 2024, so already they have been coming into major U.S. cities, including Denver is probably the most pronounced one because that's in the news so much right now. But in July 2024, the U.S. government officially designated Tren de Aragua as a transnational criminal organization. That official designation allowed for additional law enforcement resources to be allocated to combat the gang, including freezing of assets and the restriction of movement for the members of that gang, their high-ranking members. The U.S. State Department and Department of Justice also offered a $12 million reward for information leading to the arrest of the gang's key leaders. So anybody listening, if you're bold enough, bold assumptions, $12 million payday, I wouldn't be so bold.
And we get a finder's fee for informing you about it.
So following that official designation by the U.S. Government, reports surfaced that members of the gang were hiding among Venezuelan migrants in U.S. cities. Of course, like I said, New York, Denver, Miami, Chicago. The Department of Homeland Security issued warnings about the gang's threat in July, especially in the cities along the southern border. August, just a month ago, reports that Tren de Aragua gave the green light to its members to attack members of U.S. law enforcement, particularly in Denver, prompting heightened security measures across the U.S. border regions and Denver, et cetera. That prompted the Aurora Police Department, for instance, to indicate that it formed a task force with the Colorado State Patrol and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to combat the gang's growing threat. And then recently, as the gang's presence in the U.S. continues to grow, federal authorities are on high alert, particularly in terms of like human traffic and violent crimes. And there's a list of violent crimes that we can go through that this gang has perpetuated. I believe that the evidence is that they moved their headquarters from South America to Mexico. So that's further facilitating the spillover of violence in the U.S. border cities. In terms of their targeting, like I said, of U.S. law enforcement, there was actually a leaked memo from the Department of Homeland Security. Although technically, I don't know if this has been completely authorized. Of course, like when you leak memos that are supposed to be confidential to the public, Homeland Security, I don't know if they're going to acknowledge it. But the leaked memo said AOR personnel. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but please see attached Officer Safety Awareness Bulletin from the Albuquerque Police Department. Members of the our federal partners received intelligence regarding possible green light attacks on law enforcement from Tren de Aragua, TDA is kind of how they're being referred to, but especially in Denver, Colorado, credible human sources from Colorado provided information giving a green light to fire on or attack law enforcement.
Oh. That's get messy quick.
Yeah, and there already have been some attacks. So, for instance, and this may not be directly, attack on law enforcement, but on November 27th last year, Jose Luis Sanchez Valera, he was actually a 43-year-old retired Venezuelan police officer who lived in Florida. He was lured by women into a hotel room in Miami in late November and killed after he was abducted in a parking lot.
For what?
Well, he meant to meet for sex with these women, but three men basically waylaid him when he was getting into his vehicle. And then hours later, two of those men went to the victim's apartment demanding jewelry from his roommate. He was told, supposedly by the armed assailants, that they belonged to the gang, Tren de Aragua, according to the police report.
But what was he targeted for?
That was just a attack of opportunity. And I think some of the reports that we've seen are that because, for instance, it's interesting in social media, there was lately there was a post that went viral from a man in Chicago warning Tren de Aragua to not come in and infringe on gang territory in Chicago. And he specifically says, he said, hey, you got handguns, but we got switches. Well, If people don't know what switches are, they're a modification to any handgun that turns into a fully automatic handgun. They're illegal. But again, just like the pro-gun argument goes, you take away guns, the criminals are still going to have them. Everybody, and like he said, everybody in Chicago's got a switch. Okay, so,
A fully automatic handgun would be like ridiculous. It'd be like not controlled.
And there's videos out. There's plenty of videos out there. I mean, literally, they have magazines for these handguns that just look ridiculous because you're talking about 30-round magazines into a 9mm handgun, and it's shooting fully automatic. I mean, that's what they're dealing with.
They got stuff where you can take like 2 AK-47s and like mount them in this like fixture and make it be like a Gatling gun. You got like a crank and just.
I wouldn't be surprised.
You need that for protecting your home.
By the way, the slang term among the gangs for assault rifles, I believe, is a Drake.
Ah, interesting.
Where's that?
I don't know if that's got any relation to the rapper or the music artist, but whatever.
Dragon.
Yeah, the dragon. That's what I was thinking.
But at any rate, that went viral because it was a warning, and I think a lot of people have acknowledged that there's not a lot of room for this gang to grow into existing criminal activities because there would be turf wars. And so at least for the time being, they're relying on, their connections within the cartels for drug smuggling across the border, human trafficking, but this petty crime. And if they establish more of a foothold in these major cities, it could become a bloodbath, I think. Anyway, in late 2023, going back to late 2023, that's when Tren de Aragua reportedly began its takeover of the Whispering Pines apartments in Aurora, Colorado. Now, also, there's the Aspen Grove apartments, the Agate Lowry. There's several different apartment complexes that supposedly have a gang presence, but Whispering Pines is the most prominent in the news just because of the allegations that the apartment complexes had been completely taken over, which is debatable. Engaging in extortion, taking over vacant units to host illegal activities, drug distribution, prostitution, human trafficking. There's a video that went viral in late August of members going door to door in one of these apartment complexes, and actually immediately after that incident, there was a shootout in the parking lot. So whether or not they actually took control of these apartment complexes, and the argument was like they were forcing the apartment management to pay them half the rent, or that they were collecting rent and protection money from the residents there and forcing the management out is up for debate, but those stories have both been shared. Whether or not those are true, welcome to the mainstream news. We don't know.
Yeah, we do know that the residents had a rally to demand that things actually get worked on, and the city is threatening to take control of it to fix up, take it away from the management company. And that had happened to another facility in the area as well. Yeah, I mean, in terms of gang activity in general, I don't know. I don't know if it would be a war if you start seeing gangs having shootouts. We haven't had that for any big ones since like the 90s
that we've heard about.
Well, I'm sure it happens still, but like the massive ones were, in the 90s I can think of, 80s, 90s probably, fueled by the CIA, by the way. So yeah, I don't know if they try to actually encroach. I don't know anything about this gang, so I have no idea if they're trying to move in on others' territories or not. But that would be a interesting thing if that took place.
So recently, I mean, there's a lot of back and forth about what's actually true. The apartment management at Whispering Pines, they hired a law firm to engage the city on behalf of them to step in and supposedly halt this gang takeover of their apartment complex. So they hired a firm called Perkins Coie, C-O-I-E. They have a website, you can go out there. Just Google them. But they provided a 9-page report to Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman, the city manager Jason Batchelor, and then the interim police chief Heather Morris. They provided this in August 2024, indicating that this activity has been going on for a year. Each page of the 9-page report was labeled confidential treatment requested. They said that the evidence we have reviewed indicates that gang members are engaging in flagrant trespass violations, assaults and battery, human trafficking, and sexual abuse of minors, unlawful firearms possession, extortion, and other criminal activities, often targeting vulnerable Venezuelan and other immigrant populations. And the person writing this was, his name is T. Marcus Funk. He's apparently a former U.S. attorney. The firm says it represents the ownership and management of the Whispering Pines Apartments, 1357 Helena Street, Aurora, Colorado, is just one of several Aurora apartment buildings. Again, like I said, there's a couple others under the control of the Tren de Aragua gang. Firm says it has based its conclusions on interviews of witnesses and video of activities, some of which have been shared, occurring at the apartment block. He says that Tren de Aragua has threatened to kill and in certain instances has apparently actively attempted to kill members of Whispering Pines management, according to the report. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman confirmed in an interview that Venezuelan gangs have infiltrated many apartment blocks in the city. So that, they said, was going back to late 2023.
Yeah, now that's where the Aurora officials have disputed the property manager's claims that issues at the apartment buildings are due to the gangs, instead citing poor upkeep that has resulted in repeated code violations. Tenants on Tuesday said they are more afraid of the hatred sparked by news coverage. That is what they were saying in this report on Reuters. I think this report came from Reuters, but it's on Denver Post.
And it's an interesting, I think, dilemma that these migrants have. You know, notwithstanding the issue that everybody's beating around about, like, hey, you know, are these asylum seekers? Should they be allowed in America? Like, what constitutes asylum? Like, they shouldn't be here, deport them all. Whatever the case, like, you know, you got both candidates in this election cycle that have different views. One saying deport them all, the other one say they're asylum seekers. But, you know, whatever the case, from their standpoint, they may be dealing with coercion by the gang to where they're forced to downplay this. Or they may be dealing with the fact that they're in poor human living conditions, or maybe both, and maybe those poor human conditions are the fact that they have a negligent apartment management, or the apartment management can't maintain the complex because of the gang activity. So there's a lot of variables in here that we just don't understand, and I think some of that is because there's just a lot of danger around this, right? So, for instance, November 2023, a consulting visiting Whispering Pines contractor was brutally beaten by gang members. That was reported on the news. It signaled the escalating control the gang had over the Whispering Pines complex. This says that the violent incident led to the gang's dominance over daily operations and threats to residents and management, of course. Okay. Early 2024, Whispering Pines management and staff began receiving direct threats from the gang, supposedly. A property manager reported that 2 armed individuals threatened to kill him in April 2024 after a housekeeper informed him of their actions. These threats were part of a broader campaign by the gang to intimidate management and residents. April 2024, reports also started emerging that the gang members were demanding rent from tenants, going door to door, extorting money and threatening violence against anyone who was resisted. Of course, that kind of goes with that video that was shared and went viral. Tenants and property managers faced heightened threats, with some being assaulted for not complying. Summer 2024, a lawsuit filed by Perkins Coie. That's when that happened. Going back, alleging that the gang had infiltrated about a year prior. And then August 2024 is when it kind of got serious and it kind of came out in the news, right? So Whispering Pines escalated to the point where city officials shut down the apartment complex. So that might also play into the fact that residents are complaining about poor conditions. But the city cited building code violations rather than gang activity as the reason for closure, despite the claims of gang activity and control made by the property owners and their legal team.
Right.
So maybe the city, used building code violations to shut that down rather than to key in on gang. And maybe it was because of just the public sentiment about, or maybe it was political. The city wanted to get it shut down. What's the easiest way to do that? If we say it's gang activity, maybe we're going to get political like pushback. It's hard to say.
Well, I mean, I'm never going to take the word of a property manager company because I know how they operate. But I mean, that's not to say there's not gang activities. But what the recent press release from this Denver Post article says is that, and this is the mayor and the sheriff, and I think it's the interim sheriff, Heather, right?
Yes, Heather Morris. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're saying that that there is no, in all their interviews with the people. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're going to argue that the people are just telling them one thing, that no one is paying rent to the gangs. But she says, I'm not saying there's not gang members that live in this community. She said in the video during this, we've really made an effort these last few days to ask the specific questions and direct questions in terms of gang activity and making sure that people aren't paying rent to gang leaders, gang members. That's not happening. And we've discovered here today and yesterday, talking with so many residents, that that's just not the case. We're standing out here, and I can tell you that gang members have not taken over this apartment complex. Now, if you want to argue that they aren't going to tell them that they're paying protection money, maybe. But we do know that the management company basically went AWOL, and the residents were not even paying rent to them because they weren't around. Now, was the gang picking up the tab after that? I don't know. But that's just what they're reporting, according to the article here.
Right, and it's not clear on how many residents are actually U.S. citizens either. There's a large proportion of them that are migrants, and from my understanding is that the rally that they held was mostly migrants, which, I mean, they're entitled to basic human rights. I think a lot of people can agree on that. I mean, I think ultimately a lot of people are going to say, we'll get out of the country if you want basic human rights, but there's that. By the way, did you know that the guy who's heading up this operation at the Aurora apartments, the local gang leader, is referred to as the Cookie Monster.
Nice.
Yeah, on a lighter note.
This is the Godfather and the Cookie Monster. Okay.
Yeah, so his name is Gennady Jose Pacheco Quirino. He goes by the name Galeta, which is Spanish for cookie.
So how did he obtain this? Name.
Does he eat cookies?
Oh, cookie.
Packets and Bolts has special connections, Dubstank. You should know this. So within months of arriving in the U.S., cops say that Cookie and fellow gang members brutally beat a man at the Aurora apartment complex that the gang took over and occupied. And then in July, cops arrested him again, this time for shooting at the same complex that left 2 men wounded. And I believe that 2 men wounded was the same one that accompanied the video that went viral.
All right. And just to reiterate, Packets and Bolts is not claiming that the apartment complex was taken over. That's the article that
we're trying to be objective here. So anyway, by the way, so just to complete the timeline, okay, so, obviously in September, ongoing legal and safety concerns, but at the very end of August, there was a report by Fox 31 Denver, August 30th, that indicated that the mayor was seeking an emergency court order to get the properties back under the landlord's control. And subsequently to that, they dispatched a official police investigation at the complex, in which the interim police chief, Heather Morris, said on Saturday, August 31st, the day after that report came out, she said that, and I think this is a very peculiar statement, follow the double negatives. Maybe this is a topic for conjecture because I struggle with trying to understand but this is what she said. She said, I'm not saying that there's not gang members that don't live in this community.
Right, I said that. Yeah.
But she said, once we're learning out here is that gang members have not taken over this complex. So
I'm not saying it.
I'm not saying that there's not gang members that don't live in this community. Is essentially, isn't that saying I'm not saying that there's gang members that live in this community? Technically?
Well, I think everyone admits that there's gang members that's there. But in my...
She's not saying it.
I'm not saying.
or it could be, I'm saying that there's gang members that don't live in this community. So she's got 3 negatives in the sentence. If you simplify that sentence, it's counterintuitive.
Why don't we take an audio clip of that sentence and then play it backwards?
Yeah,
and
we
see
should
what
get her
really
We
want?
should run it through Wireshark.
We should reverse it, see what her subconscious is
Probably
saying.
like
Yeah,
a Hardee's commercial or something.
Hardee's commercial.
It's like they're going to talk about Paul being dead.
Yeah.
Paul's the walrus.
Now, I've said this once, and I'll say this again. If we ever want to solve immigration, not just making legal immigration better, but if we really want to stop illegal immigration, you prosecute the employers, but that never happens. Trump said it once. Someone else had said it before. Never did it. Everyone blows up when that happens. All of the media will attack and say, why would we go after the employer? Well, it's illegal to hire illegal immigrants.
Yeah, they're coming here because they can get jobs.
And if they got in trouble for it, they would stop hiring illegal immigrants, and then they wouldn't come here.
There's no incentive. Yeah,
but that never happens.
like we got to become an actual U.S. citizen through proper channels to get
And
a
so,
job.
just so everyone's aware of the art of manipulation, the illegal immigration crisis is the perfect thing, a wedge issue to polarize people. And then also control the immigrants, because we do need, we were just talking about, I think during break, the population decline in America. Everyone's aware we need immigration, and we've always had immigration. But by keeping it illegal, the people that come here are controlled by whoever is taking care of them, quote unquote. They could be deported when they don't cooperate. They're not going to be able to unionize. You're not going to be able to get good wages. So keeping them in an illegal status behooves the employers, as long as you don't prosecute the employers. So if you prosecute the employers, no more bad behavior. But we won't do that, because that's not how we are.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem with, right now there's specific legal immigration thresholds. And I know that there's movement in Congress to try to increase those thresholds. But I think whatever the legal threshold is, I think that has to be abided by. And I think that you have to vet those individuals properly.
Well, yeah, that's what...
The problem, I think, that we're
Correct.
having is that we have specific members in Congress that are relying too much on this asylum-type argument, to where, if someone comes to the border and claims asylum, that they just get let through to the United States, and that's exactly
Well, they're
what's
not
happening.
supposed to. They're supposed to go into
But that's what's happening.
a review
and
process.
they get into sanctuary cities, and I don't think all sanctuary cities are created the same. But like we were talking about before, maybe prior to the podcast or whatever, there is at least one report I've seen in a video that somebody took of a police officer saying that if an illegal immigrant in a sanctuary city, at least that one, commits a crime, we let them go.
Yeah, that's just an idiot.
It can be a violent crime. They just let them go
Yeah.
because it's a sanctuary
That's an
city.
idiot.
So I don't know if that's just a police officer who's just a fucking idiot. Because I don't understand how there's double standards like that. Like, I mean,
yeah, they don't have immunity. It's not like
people in this
diplomatic
country
immunity.
should have people in this country should have a right to life, liberty, and prosperity. And I think where that line is drawn is where your attempts to have liberty infringe on other people's liberty. So I think if we all just kind of live and let live, that's not a fucking
Yeah,
problem.
the asylum problem is also our doing, because we've been mucking around in the South American countries,
Yes.
and causing them to flee. And where do they come? Here.
This is
But
a
don't worry.
free-for-all here.
But don't worry.
But it's not just the United States. It's also Europe.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
it's
We fucked
primarily
that
the
up,
Western
too.
countries, because there's too much virtue signaling about how we need to, there was a video I saw recently of, maybe it was Bolivia. No, that's South America. I'm thinking, Belarus? Maybe it was Belarus, where they had migrants on the border. And they were taking a video
just causing
from the soldiers' perspective, and they were just talking to the immigrants and firing warning shots because they're not letting those fucking people into their borders.
There's also the climate refugees. They're in more of a problem over in Europe, because the world's become, like, there's parts of the world becoming uninhabitable, and those people are moving up to the other parts of the countries as well. But don't worry, Mongoose and Dubstench, soon we're going to be a third world country as well. We're halfway there.
Just a little bit further yet.
There's already a lot of Americans leaving for other countries.
Yeah, we know one. He went to Portugal. It sounds like a nice place.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hear those chimes. Anyone any last minute thoughts as we talk about the Venezuelan influence or the Venezuelan connection?
No, it's just muskrat in these dark times. We never know if we're going to have another podcast.
But bold assumptions
I'm
is
not
dark.
saying that the gang's going to come get us, but
Hey, listen, we're friends with all people.
Yes,
We hands across the border, hands across the sky or something.
that's the disclaimer.
I'm drinking this bold assumptions. It's dark. It's always darkest before the dawn.
these are words to live by.
All right, it is Saturday, September 7th, 2024. Packets and bolts. Remember to keep packing those bolts. And until next time, see ya.
Real goat.